Next 90 minutes, you will hear from leaders in government, leaders in finance, leaders in civil society. They will be talking about the high impact measures they're taking to tackle climate action, to tackle our climate crisis. My name is Femi Oke. I will be your host for the next 1 hour and a half. Time for me to get to work. Let's cue the video.
The COVID-19 crisis is one of many problems.
Que se pueden aplicar en diferentes escenarios de transmisión.
The Secretary General of the United Nations, António, Guterres. It is good to have you. Your Excellency, welcome.
The world has a high fever and is burning up. Climate disruption is daily news, from devastating wildfires to record floods. The damage to people and the environment is immense and growing. The recent United in Science report from the World Meteorological Organization is unequivocal. The past decade was the hottest on record, and concentrations of greenhouse gases have continued to rise. Carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels and forest fires reached an all-time high in 2019 and are 62% higher than in 1990. We must urgently reverse course. That is why I'm asking all leaders, governments, businesses, financiers, civil society and youth to act on three urgent priorities beginning today. First, we need sustainable COVID-19 recovery plans that tackle climate change. Second, we need to protect our economies and societies by acting in line with what science tells us. And third, we must prioritize the most vulnerable people and communities. Let me go into each in more detail. First, the COVID-19 response. As we work to recover from the pandemic, we must act on the following principles. Invest in green and decent jobs. Do not bail out polluting industries, especially coal, and fossil fuel subsidies and put a price on carbon. Take climate risks into account in all financial and policy decisions. Work together, and most important, leave no one behind. All COVID-19 recovery packages need to accelerate the decarbonization of the global economy. Any plan that supports economically costly and polluting coal or fossil fuel industries cannot be called recovery. Plans, policies and portfolios must demonstrate that they are consistent with the goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. I urge all development finance institutions to halt coal finance and shift their investments to renewable energy and efficiency. Transitioning to renewable energy for our electricity will yield 3 times as many jobs as fossil fuels. And the possibilities of a sustainable blue economy are still untapped. We need more such efforts. Excellencies, my second point is that all our efforts must be guided by science. This means at least a 45% reduction in global greenhouse gases emissions below 1990 levels by 2030, and net zero emissions before 2050 to meet 1.5 degree goal. This starts with ambitious and concrete climate plans, the national determined contributions, and long-term strategies that all governments must prepare as early as possible and well before COP26. I was encouraged by the recent announcements by the European Union and China. I now count on them and other main emitters to present the concrete plans and policies that will get all of us to reach carbon neutrality globally by 2050. A year ago, at the Climate Action Summit, leaders from central and local governments, civil society, banks and businesses banded together to spearhead real action towards a resilient net zero carbon economy by 2050. Industry leaders pledged the decarbonization of shipping, aluminium, cement, steel and transportation. Finance leaders moved to incorporate climate risks and opportunities into their decision-making. Members of the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, now with 29 members and almost $5 trillion in assets, and the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change, are now ready to invest trillions in a decarbonized economy. Public development banks and multilateral development banks now need clear mandates from their boards to do the same. And the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement on 12 December 2020, which will gather leaders from governments, businesses and civil society, will be an important moment to continue raising climate ambition. I look forward to working closely on this event with the leaders of Chile, the United Kingdom and France and others to deliver increased ambition. We'll ask them to act on their commitments and deliver ambitious climate plans and actions. Excellencies, my third and final request is that all these solutions prioritize the most vulnerable nations and communities. These will entail just transition policies, international cooperation and solidarity. However, resilience and adaptation action do not get the funding they need. I ask developed countries to deliver this year on their commitment to provide and mobilize $100 billion a year for mitigation, adaptation and resilience in developing countries. Government must also remove expensive fossil fuel subsidies and make that money to invest in new jobs for the poorest communities. And this will include job and skills training for people and tax incentives for businesses. We have champions and solutions all around us, in every city, corporation and country. But the climate emergency is fully upon us and we have no time to waste. The answer to our existential crisis is swift, decisive, scaled-up action and solidarity among nations. If we continue on our current path, the scale of suffering around the world due to climate disruption will go beyond all our imagination. So let us commit today, now, to sweeping climate action that can lay the foundations for a world of health, security and prosperity for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary General. Without COVID-19, we would have been just a few weeks away before COP26, that is the United Nations Climate Conference. But because of COVID-19, it has been postponed for now. The incoming president remains the same, though, of COP26, and that is the United Kingdom. It is a pleasure for me to introduce the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mr. Boris Johnson. Your Excellency, good to hear from you.
Hi, Femi and António and everybody else who are on this very, very important high-level roundtable. I wish I could be with you in person. I can see you. I can see Mark Carney. I can see all sorts of people I know. Great to see you all. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. I wish we were all in New York. Very, very good to hear you, António. So passionate and absolutely right in what you say. I've got a piece of good news for you about the UK's achievements in reducing greenhouse gases over this year. It looks like we'll be 8 to 10% down on previous years. However, the bad news is that, of course, we've achieved that by sustaining an appalling economic shock in the form of coronavirus. And the only way we've done it, or we're going to do it, is, as you can imagine, because our planes aren't flying, our people aren't moving, our cars aren't traveling, and our industry isn't producing emissions in the way that it normally would. And that's why now is the moment for us all to work together on the way forward. And yes, Femi, we're very much looking forward to chairing the COP26 next year. But in the meantime, right now, we're taking steps to ensure that the UK economy can bounce back better, build back bolder, build back better, but above all, build back greener. And that is the name of the game for us in the UK. And we've got a very, very ambitious agenda in which we want to embrace a range of new technologies in order to deliver on our carbon commitments. And of course, we were the first major country to pledge to get to a net zero by 2050. We want to deliver on our carbon commitments, but we also want to generate hundreds of thousands of new jobs, because we're going to have to do that. And everybody can see what's happening in the economies of our countries. We've got a big challenge from COVID, and a new green industrial revolution is the way to fix both those problems at once. And very briefly, none of this will be new to you. We're going to be putting a big bet on wind power. We want to be the Saudi Arabia of wind. I don't know whether Saudi Arabia is on the call, but we want to. We have massive potential. I mean, we've got huge gusts of wind going around the north of our country, Scotland. Quite extraordinary potential we have for wind. We want to lead in carbon capture and storage, a technology I barely believed was possible, but I'm now a complete evangelist for. We want to use those technologies to develop a lot of hydrogen. We're going to put a big bet on hydrogen for a lot of purposes, and not least the ability that hydrogen has to provide a lot of grunt for trucks, for trains, for even perhaps for planes, for vehicles that aren't readily capable of being moved by electric batteries. And we're thinking a lot about what we can do with hydrogen, though, of course, with EVs, electric vehicles, like many other countries, we're thinking of bringing forward the date by which we stop the use of internal combustion engines, accelerate the take-up of EVs, of zero-emission vehicles, coupled with continuing investments in solar power, obviously, nuclear power as well. I do think nuclear has to be a part of the mix, and a huge program of changing the way our homes are configured, retrofitting our homes, our commercial premises, making them much less polluting, emitting far less. And they're talking. It's called